Hey, what's going on? Benji Kaiser here, collaborating with Benjamin Brandon, bringing him on the channel for the top 5 ways to improve your video quality. So whether you're shooting on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, he's got some great tips that have actually been helping me out, and I'm going to be releasing some videos that are more than just talking head coming in the future. Benjamin Brandon is very reputable. He's even worked with companies like UCF Fighters, so he knows what he's talking about. And I hope you'll go over and subscribe to his channel to stay up to date on all of his videos. And I really hope today you just enjoyed this collaboration of him coming onto this channel. Check it out right now.
Hey, salutations everybody. For those of you who don't know me, which is pretty much all of you, my name is Benjamin Brandon. I'm a professional videographer that supports the small YouTuber community to make better quality video. Whether you don't have the gear, the equipment, the tools, the knowledge, that's what my channel is all about, is to show you guys how to do all that without all that. But I am here today on Benji Kaiser's channel to talk to you about how to make better quality video. Now these tips you can totally find on my channel, but I selected these 5 tips because they're essentially the core to making any video right away. You can use your smartphone, you can use a DSLR, you can use a camcorder. Regardless, everyone needs to know these 5 things to start making really good video. And with that, let's jump right into it, which is the first one: have a story to tell. So being that I am a videographer, I am also a filmmaker. And one of the golden rules of filmmaking is the 3-act narrative. If that's the first time you heard it, it's essentially understanding a formula to describe a story visually. And the 3 acts are a setup, conflict, and a resolution. Whether you're doing YouTube videos or videos for clients, I actually do both. I use the 3-act narrative for everything. So once you create an idea and once you create certain points and things you want to talk about, start with describing how you're going to set up that video. The typical setup is usually a tagline, just similar to what I gave you earlier. But I am here today on Benji Kaiser's channel to talk to you about how to make better quality video. Some people kind of put a snippet of what the true value of that video is in the beginning, so you can go to the end and find it. That's also another setup. Or you can also simply say, hey, today is about X. You have a point A and a point Z. What happens in between A and Z? That's your conflict. That's very easy for entertainment creators because you can essentially make up a conflict. For people who do more informative videos like both Ben and myself, that becomes a little tricky. So usually you want to put the conflict more as what conflict are you resolving for the people watching you. So for instance, I'm setting up you today saying how to make better quality video. That's my setup. I am then describing ways on how to do that. That is my conflict, resolving your conflict. Because you may not know how to do that. Maybe you're watching this because of that. And then that all leads into the third one, which is your resolution. Get to the point. Why are people here watching your video? Give them what they're here for. Don't take too long, otherwise you'll lose them. Watch hours are more important now than ever. But as long as you have a true resolution in mind, you're gonna create some fans right away and make a really good video. And with that, you can move on to the second thing, which is master the basics. For video, there are a couple basics. The 3-act narrative could be considered one, although people don't use it that much, so I would recommend you do. But understanding things like composition helps a lot, like the rule of thirds, leading lines, continuity. These are the things that true filmmakers actually use, which is cool now because you can totally incorporate that into video, which is what I do. Or even another one, which is 3-point lighting. Those are things you should totally take a look at. Not only can you find tons of resources on those online, you can also find them on my channel, or I'm pretty sure your favorite YouTubers also have some videos on that as well. So when you master the basics of actually how to create video, you can move into the other basics, which are your camera settings. And that's number 3. How to properly use the settings on your camera. Now granted, there are a ton of settings. I'm not going to get into every single one. I will get into the most important ones from my perspective. The first one being frames per second. Now I bring this one up because a lot of YouTubers actually use this very incorrectly. So with most digital cameras nowadays, including smartphones, you have about 3 main FPS settings: 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. Each one actually has their own definitive purpose. The first one being 24 FPS, which is actually what you're looking at right now. It gives you a really cool film look, and the reason why I say film look is because most of the movies you see today are actually shot in 24 frames. 24p doesn't really track you that much, so if you notice what I'm doing here, you can kind of see some motion blur, whereas you move on to 30 frames per second, it gives you more of a TV look. Let me show you what 30 frames per second looks like. Now this footage is actually being shot in 30 frames per second, but it's on a 24 frames per second timeline, so you're not going to see like the true aspects of what 30 does, but understand the motion blur again. Do you see my hand? It's not as blurry as it was originally. That's because you have more frames in the data of the video that allow you to get more information, which is pretty cool for a couple things. 30 frames per second is actually used a lot for TV sitcoms. TV shows usually have a lot going on in the background or things like that. This is why 30 frames is used there. We'll switch back to 24 now so you can kind of tell the difference once again. Moving on to the main last FPS setting, which is 60 frames per second. This is actually the one you should be using when you want to do slow motion. So if you're visualizing something in your head that you want in slow motion, stop recording, switch to 60 FPS, and then hit the record button. And the reason being is that's how you actually get really good, buttery smooth slow motion footage. Let me show you a quick quick example of what slow motion looks like at 24 frames. Did you notice the choppiness? Which does work depending on what you want to do, and sometimes action scenes are really good to do that with. But if you want a buttery smooth scene at slow-mo, this is what it looks like in 60. Did you notice the difference? Big improvement, right? So that's everything you quickly need to know about FPS. Now, for those of you who are shooting on a smartphone like an iPhone or an Android device, there are a couple key settings in there that you actually need to think about. I have an iPhone, so that's what I'm gonna show you, but there are comparisons in settings with an Android device as well that you'll need to find. So for the first one, make sure you turn on your grid. When I mentioned the rule of thirds, the grid is actually what helps you do that visually. As you can see here, you have certain points within the middle of the frame that you need to hit to apply the rule of thirds. The other thing to remember on an iPhone is there's two default settings that you have to absolutely get rid of. One is shooting in 720p. I now lose a lot of frame dimension and I can become very pixelated. So 720p you should definitely not shoot on unless you want to create some type of cool effect like some Cloverfield thing. When you're trying to imitate more of an older camcorder, which I have done on my films, that's probably the only way 720 works out nowadays. So keep that in mind. So you got to make sure you're shooting in 1080p, which is what you're seeing right now, and match that with an FPS setting that you feel appropriate for your shoot, depending on what you're doing. And of course, also shoot in 4K if you have the option. And the last thing when it comes to camera settings, especially on an iPhone, is switching from high efficiency to most compatible. Most compatible gives you the standard codec of H.264, which if you don't know what video codec is, it's essentially the translated code that creates the digital image that you see. H.264 is a very higher res, but yet low compressed, smaller sized quality. Moving on into fourth tip is jump cuts. Now jump cuts can be used very appropriately. It is my recommendation that if you have to do a jump cut and you get the audio peak or it just looks bad like this, where I'm jump cutting right, cutting off dialogue, if you're getting something like that, my recommendation is to 100% reshoot that scene. And the last thing is transition. So jump cutting is a good sense of transition when you're trying to talk about your certain points. Transitions can also do the same thing or can even transfer you to a different environment, but they can also be overused and also not used properly. Constant cross dissolves and cross dissolves or fade ins and fade ins and fade outs and fade outs, that's another thing you really want to avoid. Two things to help that out really quickly. One would be to pause in the middle of your sentence, just like I did there. Did you really notice a cut? You notice probably a minor jump cut, but that's about it. So that's a cool key factor. The other one is a whip transition. Whip transitions are really easy and really effective to do. All you have to do is take your phone or your camera, swipe in one direction, and then swipe in the same direction at the different location, match both of those motion blurs in post, and then you get that type of transition. And those are my 5 real quick tips to support your video quality here on Benji Kaiser's channel. If you're looking for more tips like that to support your video quality, I would invite you to my channel, Benjamin Brandon. I want to thank Ben for having me here. It means the world to me that he thought that I was worthy enough to be on his channel. And if this is your first time watching Ben, I would totally hit that like and subscribe button right away. Thank you for having me. I hope to see you on my channel someday. And thank you, Ben, for making the awesome quality content that you do today. It helps us all.
Hey, thanks again for tuning in today to this collaboration video with Benjamin Brandon, giving you the top 5 ways to increase the quality of your videos. Like I said, subscribe to his channel if you found his content valuable. And also, if you want to learn more about how to pack a punch and build an audience with online media, I suggest subscribing to this channel right here. Again, I'm Benji Kaiser of BenjiKaiser.com, and I will see you here on the next episode. Oh, and before I go, make sure you don't miss out on the video that I put out over on Benjamin's channel about how to build your personal brand. I'll see you here next time.